Hi guys, today in this GCSE revision session we are going to be looking at optimum body weight. So this is focused on paper 2 for the Edexcel GCSE syllabus. So this is just paper 2 and we'll go through it now. This is an area that does come up fairly regularly. And it's just worth knowing it could be multiple choice questions or it could be quite short answers, maximum about 3 marks. So we'll really rush through this. We're going to look at energy balance, which is a standalone question. We'll look at BMI, which is also a standalone question. Both of these areas about between 2 and 3 marks. We're going to look at the factors that influence body weight, and this could range between multiple choice questions, so 1 mark, to up to about 3 marks. When we start bringing in the comparisons of different body weights and optimum body weights, which again is about 3 marks. So quite a quick video, let's get on it. First thing we need to know is energy balance. So energy balance, essentially, if you have any exam question that mentions the words energy balance, you need to talk about the calories consumed or calories that are going in versus the calories that are going out. And you can see this is an exam question here, example where you've got to fill in the gap here, which is a 1 mark question, and they're asking you to put a figure in there, basically. So you want to basically understand the difference between whether the calories going in balances with the calories that are going out. So if you are eating more calories than you are burning, then you will gain weight. Okay, that's straightforward, and that's the way you would answer it. If you are eating less calories than you are burning, you are going to lose weight. And if you're consuming the same amount of calories as you are burning, you will maintain weight. So this equation here basically wants to know about weight gain. If you're consuming 3,000 calories, you need to burn less than 3,000 calories, and therefore you will gain weight. So this number here could be anything lower than 3,000. That means you will gain weight because you are eating more than you are burning. So you will store that weight as fat. Now, this is important if we are talking about weight categories, so boxing and Olympic weightlifting, where an athlete may need to get into different weight categories. And if they are underweight, they can't be in a particular category. And if they're overweight, they can't be in a particular category. So it's important to for people trying to make different weight categories or maintain a weight category. The next question, which is probably a little bit more tricky, is about BMI, the body mass index. This is basically your ratio between your height and weight. So if you get an exam question that asks about BMI or body mass index, basically you want to start off by saying it is the ratio between height and weight. Now, very rarely will you be asked to complete the actual formula. But it's worth just knowing the formula, which is basically your weight in kilos divided by your height squared in meters, which is hard to remember. So if you can just remember it's a ratio of your height and weight, you should be okay in the exam question. Now there we have problems with the body mass index. So you'll get an exam question that might ask you about a particular sports performer and say why they may be categorized as overweight or what an issue with body mass index is. So you'll start with an exam question saying what body mass index is, the weight ratio of weight and height, or height and weight. Big issue is that this body mass index can't distinguish between what is muscle weight and what is fat weight. So if you're muscular, if you've got a high percentage of muscles, then you will be heavier and therefore have a higher BMI, which will put you out as becoming obese. Now, but the body mass index has a chart that you compare against, and basically the higher your BMI, the more likely you are to be categorized as overweight or obese. So this is a big problem with the BMI. So sports people tend to come out as heavier and have a higher BMI because of their muscle mass. So, and the final part to your question is, why is that important for a sports performer? Why does a sports performer need their muscles? So what's the impact on sports? Muscles needed for things like tackling in rugby, more powerful punches in boxing, moving a weight in Olympic weightlifting. There's plenty of reasons. More power to generate more speed in running. You could come up with all sorts, being able to jump higher. The need for more muscle will always increase your body weight, and therefore link that to a sporting performance. And that's where the third mark tends to get dropped in this 3-mark question. The next area you need to know is about the factors that influence optimum body weight, and there are essentially 4 factors that you really need to know. This tends to be a multiple choice question, but there are occasions when it becomes a slightly more comparable question. So the 4 that we need to know are height, gender, muscle girth, and bone density. Now I've highlighted these 2 in slightly different because they tend to be the easier ones to talk about, but you could bring in height as well. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And they tend to have questions that compare males and females, so that's another way of looking at it. Don't go into the realm of age, fitness, or ethnicity. They aren't factors that affect your optimum body weight. So it's only height, gender, muscle girth, and bone structure. So where gender comes into it, there are some questions that say why they will give a comparison of a male and female and ask about optimum body weight for male and female. Now, the easiest route is always to focus on the males because of the impact of testosterone. Now, due to testosterone, males will have more muscle mass, they'll have a larger bone structure, and they'll have greater density of both those areas. That means they weigh more. Whereas females are obviously less muscle and less bone structure, so will have less density and weigh less. So the optimum body weight of a male will typically be heavier because of these factors. So finally, we're going to look at the comparisons you might get questions on what actual optimum body weight is. So the definition of optimum body weight is the weight you should be on average, okay, and the factors that affect it we talked about earlier was sex, height, bone structure, and muscle girth. So this is basically what it is. Sometimes that's a 1-mark or 2-mark question. Then you might get shown an image of 2 players, typically male and female, or 2 different sports, and then they will ask you to compare them and say why have they got different optimum body weights. So firstly, read the question carefully, because sometimes they refer specifically to team games and individual sports. If you have a question that talks about team games and you start talking about an individual athlete, then you won't get marks. You will be dropped marks regardless if it's right or wrong. So you just need to think about, well, what's the sport that needs more muscle and why do they need more muscle? So rugby players need more muscle to push people out of the way and make tackles. Netball players, volleyball players, someone who might be taller, have longer bones, so bigger bone structure, and therefore can reach higher to block the ball. So what you're looking at is naming the sport, the factor that impacts optimum body weight, and then the sporting application. So this is typically a 3-mark question. If it was something like individual sports, you could go around of why people might be lighter, which is always an easier way to look at it. So a distance runner, jockey needs to be lighter, and you could talk about less muscle mass or lighter bone structure, less dense bone structure, which means they carry less weight and they have less energy expenditure on the runner or the horse who's carrying the jockey. So always have in your understanding of optimal body weight probably one of these examples just to help you answer a question. Remember, sport, the factor, and then the sporting application, as in how it impacts the performance. Right, that was a real quick video on optimum body weight. I hope it helps, and good luck in your paper 2 exams.